If I say Venus to you, I bet the image that comes to your mind is not the one I'm going to be talking about today. But this one was the one that was so famous and beautiful that she was kidnapped and then finally brought back. This is the story of the Medici Venus. So first of all, who is Venus? And she gets represented quite a lot, don't she? So Venus is, sorry, this is crackling a lot, isn't it? I'm making tisane, a herbal tea with damask roses and lavender, which is very, very nice. So Venus gets represented a lot. She is the Roman version of Aphrodite, so kind of the same kind of deity we're talking about here. The word Aphrodite comes from her origins myth. Okay, so in the myth, Aphrodite came to life when Kronos, the god of time, was kind of tired of his father fathering so many children. So he decided to take matters into his own hands and use a sickle to cut his genitals off. And the genitals fell onto the sea, and from the froth of the sea, Aphrodite was born. In fact, the word Aphrodite comes from the Greek word for the froth of the sea, which may even be the word for semen in Greek. But anyway, so this already kind of gives you the idea of this deity being connected to sexuality and being connected also to the water. Okay, so you probably think of her in that painting by Botticelli, which is called The Birth of Venus, okay? And he's refrained from depicting, you know, a flying cock in the air falling in the water, but he has depicted beautiful Venus standing on a shell and coming to the shores after that she was born from the froth of the water, basically, okay? Now, represented a lot, she is kind of the goddess of beauty and of love, right? Now, this statue that I want to talk to you about today is a Greek statue which was made around the 1st century BC, and then it was brought to Rome. We don't know in what context and when, but it ended up being decorating a colonnade in Rome, basically, okay? And then it ended up in many collections, and it ended up in the collection of the Medici, and it ended up in the Uffizi Gallery of Florence. The Uffizi Gallery is like one of the most important galleries in the world, okay, which houses the Venus from Botticelli and many other very important works of art. Now, whilst today everyone flocks to the Uffizi to see and to take selfies with the Venus by Botticelli, before the fame of this painting, there was the fame of this other statue, which I'm telling you about, okay? I mean, the Venus of Botticelli was already there. It's just that this statue was a lot more famous than that painting. Okay, you have to think that the Uffizi Gallery was already open in the 1700s, and people would come from all over the world to see it. And there was something that was called the Grand Tour. It was like people would go, especially rich people, would go on this tour to see the great works of art of the Renaissance, the great works of art, in this case classical art, which Italy was famous for. And they would go on this tour of Italy and make their way, almost like a pilgrimage of works of art, and make their way to Florence to see the biggest idol of the Uffizi, which was this statue. So it's a statue of Venus, which is called Venere Pudica. Venere Pudica, is like she's a bit shy. Okay, Pudica means shy. So she's kind of covering up. So she's caught in the moment in which she's bathing, and so she's trying to cover up from people looking at her naked. I'm telling you, this story is not a story like of consent. So we have like a naked lady trying to cover up, and wait until you hear what else happens to Venus throughout this story, okay? So she is put on show inside like the most iconic place of the Uffizi, which is called the Tribuna. It's like an octagonal room with a shell ceiling. We'll talk about this room in another occasion because the whole concept behind this room is amazing. Has beautiful marble floor and velvet red walls, okay? So she's placed right bang in the center of that. Now, in the old days, you used to be able to walk inside this room and walk around. Even when I was a kid, I remember going to the Uffizi and being able to do that. Today you can't do that, and this is one of the reasons why this statue is not so famous anymore, because you can only look through like a doorway into this tribuna, this room, and so you're kind of quite far from this statue. You can't get up close, so you can't take a selfie with it, okay? So you can't take a selfie with it like you could with the Venus of Botticelli, all right? And in fact, one of the things that the director of the Uffizi is talking about, because he really wants to bring back the fame and the importance of this incredible statue, is to find a different way to experience this room so the people can go back to getting closer to this Venus. However, in the 1600s, in the 1700s, you could get close up to it because the concept of how you treated, artifacts of this kind was different. And people would literally go in and kiss the hand of this Venus. She was a sex symbol, okay? She was literally a symbol of beauty and also of sexual appeal, okay? She was considered far more beautiful than other statues of Venus, which were known and are still known to this day. Okay, by the critics, she was definitely considered extremely high quality. Okay, to give you an idea of what a sex symbol she was, it was said that a man in the 1700s, a very rich man, paid a fortune to be left alone for one night in the room with her, and in the morning when the custodians opened the doors, he ran away and they found like a mark on her, like on her leg, on the inside of her leg. So yeah, just not a great story of consent for this this statue here. But it gets worse because wait a moment, water's boiling. So it's taking me forever to take the honey out of this jar because this honey is very hard for some reason, but it's very, very nice. So it gets worse, as I said. So Napoleon comes to visit, and he comes to the Uffizi and he goes to see this beautiful Venus, and he starts asking a lot of questions about her to the director of the museum. And he says, I really like this statue. I really like it. And he jokes about and he's like, you better not ever declare war to France because I'm telling you, I'm taking the statue straight home with me the day that happens. And so I mean, it was kind of like a low-key threat, which the director caught on to very fast. And in fact, a few years later, when he became emperor, the director straight away went about protecting this statue along with some others, but most importantly this very statue, because he knew that Napoleon had his eyes on it. So he boxed it up, he sent it on a warship down to Palermo to keep it hidden inside a monastery, and he went with it himself. He went to defend it himself. However, the Venus was intercepted by Napoleon, kidnapped and brought back to Paris, where it was put on show in the Louvre for 13 years before the restoration, in which we were able to get back the Venus along with other works of art. During those years of absence of this, the Medici Venus, as it has been dubbed, from Florence, Canova, an incredible artist of the time, was commissioned with doing his own version of a Venus, and he was reported saying, I'm going to try, but it's not going to be as good as this, okay? So we have the Canova, the Venere Italica, as we call it, the Italic Venus, which he did, which is beautiful, but luckily we were able to get our very own Medici Venus back, and now she is again in place where she should be, in the Tribuna in the Uffizi. And the Louvre was able to place, instead of her, the Venere di Milo, you know, the Venus without arms, which is also very, very famous. And because they're so good at marketing, much better at marketing than we are, that Venus is far more famous than the Medici Venus. But critics and, you know, centuries past were always, I mean, everyone was always sure about the Medici Venus being like the best Venus that there was access to out of, ancient Greek statues. In 2012, they actually found, as they were going through another restoration, some traces of gold in her hair from when her hair was painted gold, because these statues were actually a lot more gaudy in their own time than we think, because often they were painted and they would have earrings on and stuff like that. But I'm happy to see it as it is. However, this is the Venus of Venuses, and not as much known today as it should be, but we hope to bring it back to the attention of the people. Not so much so that someone will kidnap it again, though. I hope that does not happen. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, subscribe and share and like, and if you didn't, you can subscribe anyway. Bye. Kind of, Giacomo, it does happen quite a lot that statues and paintings become famous or don't become famous for weird reasons. Did you know that the Mona Lisa wasn't famous at all until it was stolen from the Louvre? Did you know that? It was not the most famous work by Leonardo da Vinci at all, and that only happened last century. And it's not even the original Mona Lisa. Did you know that? Video for next time.